Good evening. Welcome once again to the mock test offered by Professor Academy for the upcoming UGC NET exam. And today we are going to look at another 10 questions with answers and explanation. Question number 1. At the end of George Bernard Shaw's pleasant play, Candida, the title character declares, I give myself to the weaker of the two. Here, the weaker of the two refers to option A, Candida, B, James Morrell, C, Eugene Marchbank, D, Alexander Mill. We get this type of question in NET exams these days. In the sense, you have to focus on major works and their endings or beginnings or iconic scenes. So this is an iconic scene in Bernard Shaw's play Candida. So answer B, James Morrell. So this is the context of the play. So we have Candida. Her husband is a priest, James Morrell. And we have a young poet, Eugene Marchbanks, who is also in love with Candida. At the end of the play, she has to decide between James Morrell and Eugene Marchbanks. And she says, I give myself to the weaker of the two. And she means her own husband, James Morrell. This is the end of George Bernard Shaw's pleasant play, Candida. Unless you know the end of this play, it is tough to answer this question. Anyway, George Bernard Shaw's play Candida can be compared with the Norwegian playwright Henrik Ibsen's A Doll's House, because both are problem plays. In the sense, there is something called problem plays which deal with social issues, and one who is considered the representative of problem plays is Henrik Ibsen, and Ibsen's works influenced Bernard Shaw tremendously. Bernard Shaw even wrote a work called Quintessence of Ibsenism. And we can see parallels between George Bernard Shaw's Candida and Henrik Ibsen's A Doll's House. At the end of Doll's House, we have a character called Nora, who has to decide whether to stay with her husband or go out and lead a life of her own. Almost a similar situation we can find in Candida. And let's look at pleasant plays. Bernard Shaw classified his works into two types, pleasant plays and unpleasant plays. So let's focus on pleasant plays. There are 4 pleasant plays. Pleasant plays in the sense, plays which deal with the crimes of, not with the crimes of society, but more with its romantic follies. So this is how Bernard Shaw defines pleasant plays. There are 4, Arms and the Man, Candida, The Man of Destiny, You Never Can Tell. Even this could be a question, a possible question in NET exam. You might get a question asking which of the following plays is not one of the pleasant plays of Bernard Shaw. So remember, Arms and the Man, Candida, The Man of Destiny, You Never Can Tell. Okay, well, let's go to the next question. They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not vary them, nor the years condemn. Which war poem contains these lines? Option A, Rupert Brooke's Peace. B, Wilfred Owen's Mental Cases. C, Julian Grenfell's Into Battle. Option D, Lawrence Binion's For the Fallen. Answer? Option D, Lawrence Binion's For the Fallen, B-I-N-Y-O-N. All these poets were war poets. Generally, when it comes to history of English literature, this is a peculiar part, and you can expect a question from war poetry. Focus on Rupert Brooke, Wilfred Owen, often asked writers. And these are some of the new writers are not so familiar poets. So you have Julian Grenfell and Lawrence Binion. You can also expect questions like this. For instance, you can get a direct question like, who wrote the war poem Mental Cases, or Into Battle, or For the Fallen? Next question. Which of the following novels reimagines Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights? Option A, J.M.Coetzee's Foe, F-O-E. B, Lloyd Johnson's Mr. Pip. C, Jean Rhys, White Sargasso Sea. D, Carol Phillips, The Lost Child. And the answer is D, Carol Phillips, The Lost Child. This novel reimagines, or it's a retelling of Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights. Let's also look at the other options. So we have Jean Rhys, R-H-Y-S, Jean Rhys, White Sargasso Sea, which is written as a prequel to Jane Eyre's Charlotte Bronte, focusing on the mad woman in the attic in Jane Eyre. Let me know in the comments what is the name of the mad woman in the attic in Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Then we have New Zealand writer Lloyd Jones, L-L-O-Y-D, Jones, Lloyd Jones, Mr. Pip. Mr. Pip is not exactly a retelling of Charles Dickens' Great Expectations, but the title Mr. Pip is based on the central character Philip Pirrip in Charles Dickens' Great Expectations. And in this novel, Lloyd Jones' Mr. Pip, we have a school teacher who is reading this book to a set of students, and that creates the problem. And that book is Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Then we have South African writer and Nobel laureate J.M.Coetzee, his novel Foe. So here's a question for you. Coetzee's Foe is a retelling of which novel? Next question. In Sexual Politics, published in 1970, Kate Millett examines patriarchal myths by studying the works of 4 authors, namely option A, James Joyce, Henry Miller, Norman Mailer, Gustave Flaubert. B, James Joyce, Henry James, Norman Mailer, Gustave Flaubert. C, D.H. Lawrence, Henry Miller, Norman Mailer, Jean Genet. D, D.H. Lawrence, Henry James, Norman Mailer, Jean Genet. Answer C, D.H. Lawrence, Henry Miller, Norman Mailer, Jean Genet, G-E-N-E-T, French writer. See, when you focus on literary theory, you have classic texts. This is one of the classic feminist texts, Sexual Politics by Kate Millett. These days, question setters go in depth. At least what you can do, if you want to prepare for NET exam, upcoming NET exam, just look at the contents page of, critical works like Sexual Politics. You will get to know at least the gist of the entire work. So if you get questions like this, at least if you remember D.H. Lawrence, you can eliminate 2 options. Or maybe Henry Miller, you can narrow down the answer to option C. Okay, so this is what you can do. Take iconic feminist texts and at least look at the contents page or get to know the gist of these works. So Kate Millett's Sexual Politics, where she discusses works by D.H. Lawrence, Henry Miller, Norman Mailer, and Jean Genet. What you can do now, at least get to know some of the works of D.H. Lawrence, Henry Miller, Norman Mailer, and Jean Genet. Next, who explores the latent racism of Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, published in 1899? I would say this is a bit direct question if you are familiar with post-colonialism. A, Salman Rushdie. B, Bill Ashcroft. C, Chinua Achebe. D, Helen Tiffin. Answer C, Chinua Achebe. So Chinua Achebe wrote an essay called An Image of Africa, subtitle Racism in Conrad's Heart of Darkness. So in this essay, he declared that Joseph Conrad is a racist, because this novel or the portrayal of Africa in this novel is racist. So he says, Heart of Darkness projects the image of Africa as the other world, the antithesis of Europe and therefore of civilization. So what is the ulterior motive of or implied, construction in Heart of Darkness? Conrad wants to show or project the civilization of the British Empire or Britain in general or the West. So in order to highlight their civilization, Africa is portrayed as a savage nation or continent. So this is how Chinua Achebe unmasks racism in Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. Let's also focus on the other options. So here is a book, The Empire Writes Back, subtitled Theory and Practice in Postcolonial Literatures, by three major authors. You have Bill Ashcroft, Ashcroft, Gareth Griffith, Gareth, Griffith, Griffiths, then Helen Tiffin, Tiffin. The interesting thing is the title is taken from a phrase or statement made by Salman Rushdie. So it was Salman Rushdie who said the empire writes back with a vengeance. From that statement, these writers, Ashcroft, Griffiths, and Tiffin, they took the title for their work, critical work, The Empire Writes Back, a significant work when it comes to post-colonial criticism. Next, which pair of characters come in Samuel Beckett's absurdist play, Happy Days? Option A, Vladimir and Estragon. B, Ham and Clove, Hamm and Clove, Clove. C, Nag and Nell, Nagg and Nell. D, Winnie and Willie, Winnie and Willie, Willie. It's easy for you to eliminate, I think, option A, Vladimir and Estragon, iconic characters created by Beckett. Answer D, Winnie and Willie. These characters come in Happy Days, Beckett's Happy Days. Let's also look at the other characters by Beckett. The moment we say Beckett, we are reminded of his famous work, Waiting for Godot. And a question, easy question for you, what is the subtitle of Waiting for Godot? Or another question, when was it published for the first time? Then major characters, we have Vladimir, Estragon, Pozzo, Lucky. Then towards the end, we have Boy, and the invisible character, or one who is absent, we have Godot. Then we have Samuel Beckett's Endgame, in which we have these characters, Ham, Clove, Nag, and Nell. Next question. Essays on the Canadian Imagination is the subtitle of option A, Linda Hutchins' Narcissistic Narrative. Linda Hutchins, Hutcheon. B, Marshall McLuhan's Understanding Media. McLuhan, Mcluhan. Then C, Northrop Frye, Frye. His work, The Bush Garden. D, Margaret Atwood's Survival. So which of these works has the subtitle Essays on the Canadian Imagination? A commonality among these four, all these writers are Canadian writers or Canadian critics. Answer C, Northrop Frye's The Bush Garden, whose subtitle is Essays on the Canadian Imagination. All the other works are also famous. So you have Margaret Atwood's Survival, about Canadian imagination. Then we have Linda Hutchins, who coined the term historiographic metafiction. Even the title itself refers to metafiction, narcissistic narrative. Then you have Marshall McLuhan's Understanding Media, in which he talks about the medium is the message or global village. These are the concepts by Marshall McLuhan. Next question. Point out the wrongly matched novel fictional writer pair. So you have a novel and you have a fictional writer in that novel. So option A, Vladimir Nabokov's Pale Fire, and you have the fictional writer John Shade, Shade. You have to find out whether this novel and the fictional character they go together. I just know that whether this fictional character appears in Pale Fire. Next, option B, Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse. You have Augustus Carmichael, Carmichael. Then option C, Margaret Atwood's The Blind Assassin. Then Irish Chase. So that's the fictional author given here. Then option D, Yaan Martel's Beatrice and Virgil, Nicholas Greene. So of these four pairs, which one is wrongly matched? Answer D. Yaan Martel's Beatrice and Virgil, we have Nicholas Greene. So the fictional author Nicholas Greene doesn't come in Yaan Martel's Beatrice and Virgil. The moment we say Yaan Martel, which novel comes to your mind where we talk about the survival of a boy and a Bengal tiger, Richard Parker? And all the other options, pay attention to all the other options. You can read about Vladimir Nabokov's Pale Fire, and the fictional author in it, we have John Shade. Similarly, we have Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse. We have an old poet, male, Augustus Carmichael. But you can also answer this question. So in To the Lighthouse, you also have a female painter. What's her name? Then you have Margaret Atwood's Blind Assassin, Irish Chase. But let's focus on the question. Yaan Martel's Beatrice and Virgil, it's a fantastic novel. If you haven't read Beatrice and Virgil, try it, because people mostly read, students mostly read A Life of Pi. But once you fall in love with The Life of Pi, you can read Yaan Martel's Beatrice and Virgil, which is a different take. So here we have a fictional writer called Henry L Hote, or Lot, L''Hote. Then in the option, we have a fictional writer, Nicholas Greene. Actually, Nicholas Greene comes in Virginia Woolf's novel, Orlando. Next question. What term is used by Michel Foucault, the French philosopher, to refer to the attempts made by governments to rationalize the problems posed by the physical existence of a population? So you have more people, then you have more problems. So that kind of a concept. So which term? Because we have four terms, all the four terms are associated with Michel Foucault. Option A, biopolitics. B, panopticon. C, repressive hypothesis. D, episteme. Answer A, biopolitics. So biopolitics refers to the problems posed by the physical existence of a population, or something to do with population and running the government. Then panopticon, repressive hypothesis. Epistemology is a interesting word, critically loaded one. Episteme means knowledge. Epistemology means the study of knowledge. What you can do, you can look up these terms, panopticon and repressive hypothesis, and also episteme. And these are some of the famous works by Michel Foucault. You have The History of Sexuality, then Archaeology of Knowledge, then you have Discipline and Punish, The Birth of the Prison. Next question. Which novel of Jane Austen is taken by Edward Said for his contrapuntal reading and is fixed in the Antiguan context to talk about how the absence of slavery haunts the novel? So understand the question. So we have Edward Said, one who is known for his famous book, Orientalism. A question for you. Orientalism was published in which year? Let me know in the comments. So Edward Said is known for his contrapuntal reading. Through this reading, he exposes, the imperialist thoughts hidden in classic works like Jane Austen's work. So which work? Option A, Pride and Prejudice. B, Persuasion. C, Mansfield Park. D, Sanditon, Sanditun, which is also written by Jane Austen. Answer C. Mansfield Park. So what you can do, you can read Edward Said's Culture and Imperialism. In this work, you have a chapter called Jane Austen and the Empire, in which Edward Said says the estate of Mansfield Park, an ideal of civilization, is maintained through the estate owned by Sir Thomas Bertram in Antigua, Antigua. So when we read this, we don't read between the lines. Edward Said says you have to understand. So here is an imperialist country where we have this Mansfield Park, but the revenue generated in Antigua through sugar plantation. So that's the source used for building or maintaining this estate of Mansfield Park. So that's the contrapuntal reading. You have to read between the lines to expose imperialist ideologies hidden in classic works like Jane Austen's Mansfield Park. So with this, we end today's session. Professor Academy offers this mock test for free for 10 days. So we have a few more days to go. Keep coming, keep listening to these videos, revise and crack the upcoming UGC NET exam and other exams. Thank you.